Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us here tonight for this screening of Cicada Song. The film is written and directed by SCA alum Michael Starr, who I'm really happy to have joining us for a conversation tonight. He also produced it along with Tom Bellos and John Kellogg. We are going to screen the film first. It runs at about 73 minutes. And then afterwards, we'll have the Q&A portion with Michael, and we will also open it up during that time for audience Q&As as well. So you can use the Q&A box feature for that. This film's presented courtesy of Michael and Indie Rights Movies, and it is available to stream on multiple other platforms as well. So be sure to tell people about it after tonight's screening. With that, Michael, unless you have anything to add, I think let's start the show.
The one thing that we kind of discussed at length was, how do we do this without like waving a flag in some sense, even though it's there, it's not like a 40-foot flag. It's more like a subtextual thing. It's like, look, we have issues, and as a country, we need to kind of look at what problems we're facing. And I think this up and coming election is going to kind of decide where we fall as a nation. Whether you fall on that side or the other side, I'm not going to sit here and debate. But I had a discussion right before we started shooting with a gentleman from Missouri who was going up to Minnesota to work on some highways. He was a construction worker. And he'd only been on a plane once in his life, twice with me. And he's sitting right on the wing, and the wing's bouncing up and down, and he's nervous. And I said, here, read this script. We're going to make a movie in Missouri. He's like, oh, cool. And about 12 pages in, he says, this is a movie about a gay person. I don't believe in that. And I said, it's not about a gay person. Keep reading. And by the time we hit our layover, he handed me back the script, and he goes, I'm not a fast reader, but I only got to like page 48, but do they find her? And I was like, thank you. You just illustrated my point. You understood the fact that it was not about gay or straight or blue or red. It's about humans. It's about being human and understanding from the human perspective. If you understand what the goodness is in people, then you'll see it, in others. And I think him telling me that he understood that the story wasn't about a gay woman, but about someone in trouble. He looked past it and saw it more of as a mystery thriller rather than, an LGBTQIA genre.
Yeah.
Thriller.
Which makes sense.
So we just kind of felt like it was important to bring in the migrant aspect because the story originally started off as almost like an Aaron Brockovich with the water, situation in California, the drought. But once the 2016 election was over, we're like, it's not about the drought anymore. It's more about children that are being removed for money. And that was part of and by the way, if you haven't watched the movie yet, spoilers.
Yeah. I would imagine our participants at this point stuck it through for the whole thing.
Thank you very much.
Didn't just come to the end.
Yeah. So I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, you absolutely did. Were there other things that sort of, because you didn't write it in Missouri. I'm curious if other stuff kind of came up for you in how you crafted the story once you were on the location and once you were kind of there? I know budget was flexible, so you couldn't really, or not flexible, the budget was limited. So you couldn't really come up with too many ideas being there. But I do wonder if being there inspired any other ways of approaching it, maybe even just from a directing standpoint.
Yeah, obviously, independent film, for those of you that are, independent filmmakers, and I assume most of you are or will be, after graduation, I'd say 99.99% go on to make independent something. Going to the location was the most important thing I could have done, because you write a story with, something in mind, and you don't necessarily see it until you're there. So I did write, the mom and pop gas station as a 2-pump gas station, little tiny deli store kind of thing. Like literally, I drove past it. I went in and I was like, who owns this place? I want to shoot some scenes here. And that led me to Cowboy, which we'll get to in a minute. But for the most part, you go in with the intent of not having any expectations. You're like, all right, let me see the location. Is it right for the tone of the film? So everything that we did, like down to Richard's log cabin, we actually were introduced to these people that had a log cabin. And I'm like, it's just one of those things where you're like, okay, this is our set. It looks great. It's dark. It's tonal. And you just kind of figure out where to put the camera at that point.
Yeah. Since you've already sort of started speaking to some of the potential future independent filmmakers who are watching, this was your first official feature film that you did, right?
Yes.
I'm sure they especially would love to hear you say a little more about maybe the biggest lessons you took away from this. I think the first feature is always the biggest learning experience, and regardless of what your experience was beforehand. So I'd love to hear any other lessons you kind of picked up on through that process at any point in the process, whether the writing process or later down the road in the distribution, which we haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah, I would say the most important thing that you could do as a filmmaker is collaborate. You need to listen to the people that know their jobs better than you, even if you think you know better.
Yeah.
Surround yourself with people that do their job better than you, and you will always be doing good work. And listen to them. I mean, I've had conversations with the actors on set because they didn't feel like the line was appropriate or they didn't understand a specific moment. And we would stop for 15 minutes and discuss it. And then once they understood it, it became, they owned it. You got to let people own what they're doing. Now, obviously, I had a vision for the film, and, we had discussions on, how we would shoot and everything like that. But knowing that everybody's there to make the same movie, it's those decisions that get you the best results. So, if I can apply music to this whole thing, everybody's in the same band playing the same song. And if somebody's playing a different song, you got to kick them out of the band.
Yeah.
That's the simplest analogy I can muster. Now, if it's you that's playing the different song, you have to reevaluate your situation.
Well, it sounded like you also relied on a fair amount of people with whom you had worked before, connections you had made at USC, and you relied on those connections pretty heavily. I love that you dedicated it to Norm at the end. I know he played a big role in this, and I'm sure he would have loved to have seen the final product of it.
Yeah, Norm is a there's no words to describe Norm except excellent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for those of you who never knew Norm, Norm was an editor on some major motion pictures, and he was the chair of the editing department at USC, and his door was always open, and you could go in and chat with him, and he was always interested in what you had to say, always.
Mm-hmm.
And when he passed away, it was literally right before we were going to release the film, and I just said, you know, we have to put a memoriam in for Norm, you know, because it's just too close. And he was really excited about this film, and I was just so sad that he didn't get to see it.
Yeah. I want to open up to some audience questions. I noticed a few people typed in questions in the chat feature. If you are one of those people, please re-enter your question in the Q&A box, so that way we can have them all streamlined into one place and kind of go through them. What I'm going to do is I'll call on people, and I'm going to invite you up into the conversation. So I will bring your screen. You'll basically join the panel, and you are invited to read your question either with video on or video off. And if you have a question you'd rather me just read for you, just specify it when you ask your question, and I'll do that. So I'm going to start with the first one that's in the Q&A box, which is from Francis. I'm not going to do that because Francis, it appears, left. I'll ask their question for them, which was why cicada as a motif?
That's actually a good question, because while we were in Missouri, there are thousands of cicadas. Now, I mean, they're not generally specific to all parts of the country, so people may not have even heard a cicada before, but they're very percussive, and they open the film. And what I named my production company was Cicada Song LLC, and I had talked to one of my mentors, and he's like, you know, that's a great title for the movie. And I was like, you know what, it is, because originally it was called Heartland Prisoner, which I loved the title, but Cicada Song had more flow to it, and it was like, you know, anybody here has seen Donnie Darko, the whole cellar door thing. It has that beautiful sound to it. But the cicadas, you know, every 17 years they have this moment where they come out of the soil, they hatch and they come out, and then they die. So they're the loudest portion of their world is that moment where they're screaming and scratching and making all that noise, and then they're gone. And that moment in the opening of the film is kind of that whole metaphor of, you know, this movie is bringing you into this world of, you know, I mean, it opens with a bloody eyeball, for Christ's sake. You know? Yeah. But the cicadas are very representative of the area and the arena that the film is in. So yeah, we wanted to kind of show that in a way that the cicadas were part of the story as a character. Yeah.
I want to go to Ailish Turner next. I'm so sorry if I pronounced your first name incorrectly there. I am promoting you to panelist right now. And I invite you to turn on your video if you'd like, or you can just speak.
Hello. You pronounced my name correctly, so that was really great.
Great.
So you kind of already, oh no, I can't see my question. Okay, I'll just try and remember what I said.
I see your question. I see it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you kind of already covered this earlier, but I was just curious to know a little more about, like, I guess, specific methods of research that maybe you would have gone into in tackling, like, the heavy subject of the movie. Like, I know, as you were saying, being in small town locations, you couldn't tell everyone the exact subject of the movie at every point. And I guess I was just curious to know a little bit more about the initial, like, writing, research, and then initial production side of things in that regard.
Okay. Well, the research was, you know, based on number one, that we are living in a time where, you know, we're actually living this part of history right now. And, you know, we're not in sync. And I just felt like getting into some of the deeper crimes where people are, you know, moving money for cartel, like I read an article about some farmers that were laundering money for a cartel in Mexico. They were moving money back and across the border, and they were laundering money. And they got arrested. They got caught. I think they got caught with $15 million in their trunk. I mean, that to me is just incredible. And obviously the human, the kidnapping and the human, I'm at a loss for words here. It's trafficking. Thank you. Yeah. The human trafficking aspect, you know, has always been an issue. And especially now that, you know, you have so many people that are desperate. Farmers, you know, aren't making enough money because the subsidies are not covering enough of their, you know, they get paid a subsidy on top of what they produce as a crop to keep their farms active. And that was one of the things that we wanted to mention was, you know, Bob buys this huge combine because, you know, he didn't have one. You know, he had to, or his other one maybe broke down, you know, based on whatever history may be, you can, you know, vacuum deduce that. But we needed to kind of bring in the fact that Bob couldn't afford to pay for something like that, even with the government subsidy. So there was something deeper, and there was a huge crime going on that, you know, they'd kept hidden for a pretty long time. You know, it's the kidnapping of Annabelle, the disappearance of Annabelle, because otherwise, you know, Karen may not have really looked that deep. You know, she believes that she's one of them to some degree. You know, it's her hometown. She knows these people. She can put up with them. They put up with her for the most part. But it really comes down to knowing that, you know, tolerance is a big issue. Not to mention, you know, the whole situation that we're facing right now as far as, you know, Black Lives Matter and people being deported, you know, and this, I don't know what else to say about it, but researching the locations, obviously I went there and got to know some of the people in there and their livelihoods and how they worked on a regular basis. And, you know, some of them did have farm managers and, you know, had migrant workers. And, you know, I just based it loosely around not getting too involved in the nuts and bolts of what she did. You know, it was more about the fact that we knew that she was taking care of the farm and she had people that respected her and she respected them, but she wouldn't get involved with them on a regular basis until she was forced to. So hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was really insightful, and it was a very beautiful movie. So thank you.
Thank you, Eilish. Appreciate it. I do know that there was a question here that said, how many fests were you in and how many did you win?
Yep.
Where is the film available now? Well, Ron, we were in 3 festivals. Obviously, we didn't get into any of the big ones, which is normal for a lot of independent films that are not in some of the workshops or you know, have big stars. Like we have Joseph Bottoms, and we're blessed to have him. But we were accepted to Catalina Film Festival, which I was extremely happy for, and we ended up winning that festival, Best in Fest. They were so awesome to ship our entire cast and crew over to the island on a Friday night at the Avalon Theater to basically just treat us like movie stars, and it was unbelievable, memorable experience. Immediately after that was Highland Park, where we ended up winning best feature film for the festival, which I thought was also amazing because they treated us so well. I mean, every festival treated us well. There's no question. And then after Highland Park, we ended up at Glendale International Film Festival, where we won Best of Fest, and Lyndsey and Ryan both won their awards for Best Actor, Best Cinematography. And you can find the film streaming on Amazon, Apple, Vudu, Tubi, Google Play, and YouTube. And that will bring us into distribution.
I just used the Tubi app for the first time to watch something. I think of those ones you mentioned, I wouldn't recommend that one, with all due respect to them. But Prime works pretty well.
Yeah, and if you do watch the film on Amazon or any of the platforms, be sure to rate and review. As independent filmmakers, I will tell you that if you do end up on those platforms, it is completely based on your audience participation. Prime will not keep you if you do not have an audience participation. Honest to God. So, like, if you can get 50 views and reviews and ratings and reviews being the same thing, in the first month, they will email their Amazon Prime Video people, anyone that subscribes to it that likes mysteries or thrillers or comedies, and they will basically recommend your film to that audience. And I know this because my post-production supervisor got an email from Prime basically pitching his own movie to him. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But yes, it is important to have audience participation on this level.
And it's specifically rating and review participation. So if this is I'll just throw out random numbers. Let's say 50,000 people watch it, but no one reviews it. Or 50 people watch it and all review it with 5 stars. Which helps your algorithm more in terms of who sees it? That's a very tech-based question, but I'm curious if you kind of know how the model works at all.
I'm not as familiar with that, but I can say that the more people that respond to your film and you respond back, like they comment on your film, you comment back, the more interaction you have with your audience, the more Amazon likes you. So, you could have 500 views, but 50 people respond in the first month. You're still going to get the promotion. You have to interact with them, basically saying, thank you so much for watching the film. We really appreciate it. It's the communication that they want. It's making sure that your audience is involved and you're involved with your audience. And I think it's super important as an independent filmmaker because, studios have their own ways of doing things. They have lots of money. Basically, we're doing everything via social media. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and then we tag our distributor, Indie Rights Movies, who basically then, will get the tag with their name on it. They're like, oh, Cicada Song tagged us, and they'll push it out to their audience, which is 20,000, 30,000 people. That's kind of how they work, and the good thing about them is they're one of the few distributors that are, all the independent distributors are also sales reps, sales agents. So they'll do their marketing at the festivals and they'll release your film on whatever platforms, they pitch to. But Indie Rights is kind of a different model. They basically are more of they're like a distributor model with a sales agent vibe. So you don't necessarily pay them anything. If they like your movie, they'll pick you up, you'll deliver everything to them, and then they take 20% of whatever it is they sell. And they have nothing to do with theatrical unless you're going to do like a 1 week LA-based theatrical release, which they'll set you up with. But other than that, they get you on the platforms that they promise. They actually paid us after the first quarter. We got money. So, I mean, I've heard horror stories of independent films not seeing a red cent from the distributor, and can't say that about indie rights, and I won't, because they're awesome.
And you came into contact with them at one of your festivals. Is that how they found you, or you found them?
Ironically, okay, so that's kind of yes and no. So a friend of mine, Nick Bertelson, introduced me to a friend of his, Liz, who, basically was kind of helping me decide on which, like, she gave me a few ideas and connected me with a couple of people. And basically I kind of went with the decision of, what's the best for our film? We're not a big budget film. We have people to return money to. We need to make some money back. Even though our budget wasn't huge, we still need to return that money to the investors. But she connected me with Indie Rights just before we got into the Catalina Film Festival. And as soon as I signed with Indie Rights, basically Catalina moved us up from the Below Festival online festival that we were part of to the actual screening portion of the festival, with a huge red carpet and paparazzi, and it was not a realistic experience at all. It was too fantastical to even get into. But if you're going to submit to that festival, you gotta, period. Hands down, one of the best experiences I've ever had. So one of the volunteers at that festival handed me a business card, not knowing that I had already signed with Indie Rights. And she said, "I think this company would be really great for your film." I said, "I just signed with them." So it was kind of like the irony of serendipity. It was perfect, serendipitously, it just worked out.
And so the model all along, though, is going to be a sort of direct distribution model of no theatrical release, online releases through streaming platforms. That was kind of always the vision of how that would sort of play out with Indie Rights, once you kind of...
Yeah, everybody wants their movie to be seen on the big screen, and they want the revenue of the box office and things like that. But, some of my friends have released films nationwide into theaters, and it's a tough gig, man. I mean, you have to spend a lot of money to release a movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we just kind of sat down, I talked to my producers, and I talked to, some people that have had some success online and on streaming. And I said, for us to do anything at this point would be not to spend money, would be start building our revenue right away. So it was just kind of like, we knew that's what we had to do. And the film was released on the 21st of January, and literally less than a month later, we're all quarantined.
Yeah.
And could you imagine if we released the film and we ended up losing all that theatrical revenue? It would have been nothing to say about it. I was just so happy we did what we did.
I see we have one more question that came in, and since we're just about out of time, this is perfect because it's on topic. So I'm gonna invite Cindy up, unless you would rather not. But I'm gonna invite.
No, come on, Cindy.
Cindy, I'm inviting you to be a panelist right now, and you're welcome to turn on your video, or you can just do audio only, whatever you're comfortable with.
You're on mute, Cindy.
Cindy, are you still with us?
Okay, sorry.
There
Hi,
you go.
hi, Michael.
Hi, Cindy. How you doing?
Hi.
How are you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Sorry.
Can you hear me? Hello? Cindy, are you there? I guess not.
Cindy, I don't know if you can hear us. We can definitely hear you.
Close.
All right. Well,
Can you hear me?
yes, Cindy.
Yes,
Can you hear us?
yes.
Hey, I'm so sorry, Michael. We've had this trouble before.
It's okay. No problem.
No, I think you answered the question. I'm involved in a documentary right now. They're gonna and I was just curious about distribution, and you pretty much went through the whole thing.
Yeah. You know, here's the thing. With the whole festival distribution thing, I think there's a lot of independent filmmakers that, are riding on the hopes that they're going to get discovered at a festival.
Mm-hmm.
And Matthew, I mean, I'm sure that Clementine and Sandrine and anyone in the industry will tell you that getting into Sundance is like winning the lottery. Okay? Getting into Tribeca, same thing. Toronto, South by. Those festivals are, they're run by very powerful industry people, and they want butts in seats because that's how they get their advertising budget. That's how they get everything. And it's totally understandable, and I don't have anything negative to say about that. The regional festivals and the local festivals are really, they do a lot for the local filmmakers. And I do feel that, the regional ones, if you can't get into the international ones that are like big names, the regional ones and the local ones will do what they can to promote your film.
Right. That's great advice. Thank you.
But that being said, one thing about getting into a festival, it just means that somebody's interested in your film other than you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that, your film isn't interesting to other people. It just kind of puts a stamp on it saying, you know what, this is, something that we believe in as much as the filmmaker. We think that this is something that should be seen by a larger audience, and you could literally, take that laurel and plop it on your trailer and people will be like, oh, they got into that festival. That's cool,
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that you won't get distribution.
Ah.
Okay? It just means that, you start building a grassroots following in that way. And that's what you kind of want to do with the festivals. Now, you could submit to 20 festivals and get into 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you win all 3 of them, then those people obviously know something, they feel strong enough that your film is worth, putting out there. And then
Right.
it gives you that boost as well, as that boost of confidence, and instead of just kind of going straight to distribution, But I think festivals play a huge role in independent films, but they are very subjective to the programmers, and they do have their their motif for the festival, and it's hard to judge, what they want at that particular time. And it's totally cool. I mean, festivals are fun. They can be expensive,
Mm-hmm.
but they do serve a purpose in getting independent voices out.
Wow. Well, I just want to say one more thing. Michael, you have always been so much like the person that you are honoring in your film. Anytime I've ever had a question, I can just pop in on you, and usually you get back to me. And I just want to thank you for being so kind, and you're so successful and brilliant. And I'm just telling you that no, I'm not just saying that, because you have answered questions for me. And I mean, it's late at night and you still answer. So I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome, Cindy. Anytime. And I hope you actually, get your documentary. Is this the Beachcomber movie?
Yeah, it's the beach. I'm just involved in it. I'm the subject, one of the subjects, the line that goes through it. So there, but I'm also trying to offer some advice. I don't know if they're gonna take it or not.
Can only hope.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Cindy.
Thank you.
Well, I think that's about all the time we have. Michael, it's been really great talking to you. Congratulations on the film. It must feel really good to have done all the things you did with it, and especially the decision to not distribute in theaters. That one worked out really well for you.
Yeah, well, the world is changing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I will say that if anybody out there is in the throes of pre-production on an independent film, call in those favors, shoot it in a place where you can get those favors. Your first film is always the hardest. Obviously it gets harder because the second one is obviously going to be more money, and you got to have more. You got to make it as big as possible with the money that you have, but don't be afraid to go small and make it feel big. You don't need $1 million to make your first movie, even though that's like what a lot of people feel the minimum is. And if you are going to get a star attached to it, then you might need some more money. But, if your script is good enough, they may be totally down for scale. And SAG was nothing but helpful to us. And, I really appreciate everybody coming out tonight. And if you do want to see a better streaming version of it, obviously, Amazon, Google Play actually is pretty good too. But it looks great on a lot of the platforms. But Matthew, I wish you all the luck in the world on your PhD endeavor.
Thank you. Yeah, for those who are watching, this is actually my last of the alumni screenings. So I'm glad Michael could be the last one to interview for it. It's been a pleasure doing this for 3 years now. And I hope someone takes it up afterwards, because I love that the school does this and gives opportunities to speak to alumni about their work and promote it. And it's been really great doing this. And Michael, I'm glad you could be my outro, my swan song, if you will. It's been a blast.
I'm glad to be the noodle in your cap. Or the feather in your cap, I guess. I don't know.
Yes. Maybe a noodle. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, you do. No, anyway. Macaroni. That's what.
Yes.
But either way, super appreciative to be, your final interview. It's my honor knowing that you have done so many of these, and just being part of the alumni screening is an honor for me.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm glad we could do it. I appreciate you saying that, Michael.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for me, everyone. Everyone, take care of yourselves, and thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for watching.
All right. See you, Michael.
Bye.